In anticipation of National Veterans Small Business Week, Lisa suggested that we do something special. Together, we created the Veterans Helping Veterans Business Anthology Group. It's been a great success. We networked, collaborated, conducted interviews, and wrote a book. During this journey, Lisa and I had the pleasure of meeting numerous entrepreneurs and business leaders with backgrounds in the military veteran and military spouse community. We carefully selected 20 contributors at various stages of their business endeavors, from ideation to well-established enterprises. We engaged in insightful conversations, the highlights of which are shared in our new book, We Are Stronger Together, Strength and Diversity. In addition to these interviews and our contributors' lessons learned, inside the book, Lisa and I also provided practical information and tons of resources to help others in their entrepreneurial pursuits. Remember to grab your copy of the book on Amazon to meet all the contributors, authors Lisa DeShorm and myself. Are you ready to get a glimpse of what it takes to be a veteran business owner? Take a listen. My guest today is Ryan Livergood. He is one of the veterans that is joining us on the Veterans Helping Veterans Business Anthology. He is a co-founder of K&L Auto and Diesel Repair Services. And, I'm excited to have Ryan here today because he is someone that is very interesting to me, because I could not for the life of me figure out why anybody, himself and his team members included, would want to open a mobile diesel service in the Manassas, Virginia area. And I'm hoping that Ryan will be able to shed some light on that for us today, because with the traffic headaches and all the things going on in that area, being able to service a 25-mile radius of Manassas, Virginia from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. with appointments on the weekends, you got to be just a little bit cray-cray to do something like that. Ryan, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
I tried, as I did my research about what you guys are doing over there, and I want to make sure I get your business right. K&L Auto and Diesel Repairs, and you guys take care of diesel trucks, the diesel fleet, heavy equipment. I saw that, and when I read Manassas, Virginia, I was a little bit going, really? How does that even work? So what got you guys thinking that you could even accomplish this feat?
Well, you kind of alluded to it. We have a couple other co-founders. One's Silence, and one is my direct managing business partner. He's coming from this field from a diesel tech. He went to school for it. He obviously knows the industry. He's been working in it for a while, and there's such a demand. Socially, we pushed the vocationals out for so long, and then there's such a continuous demand that COVID was definitely an indicator of that. We did so much more shipping during that time, and it just exacerbated an already, underperforming, field. So we were able to jump into the space. Obviously, with him coming from the diesel space, I'm coming from more of a business mindset, entrepreneurial thing, and we've married that up, and are making it our own.
I noticed that you guys started your business during COVID, but I also noticed that you guys received the Prince William County Chamber of Business Emerging Business Award in February of 2023. And that's a feat, because there is a lot of things going on, but to be able to get that level of recognition so soon in the development of your business, what did that make you guys think about when that happened?
Well, we have only been in existence a little over a year and a half, so about 19 months old, roughly. But again, there's a lot of demand being out there, and then just knowing the right connections to be had. We both recognize the value of being part of a chamber of commerce, and then networking on top of just doing the direct sales, knocking on doors, really just finding that customer base. A lot of legwork, a lot of just grit, a lot of headaches, because you don't know where that next meal ticket is. Like any other startup, you got to figure out how to keep the bills being paid and not go crazy. Luckily, business partner had some inheritance at his disposal, and I know me, I used some personal, finances that I kind of built up over the years. So we made that work and then just kind of stretched it out. But luckily, like I said, with the demand, you started operating costs and kind of funneling that back into the business and making that grow.
Now, since this is a veteran-owned business, how much did your guys' background in the military play a part in you being able to really get this business off the ground when other people would have looked at the same thing and thought, I can't do this, the traffic, the time, the constraints. And then you guys said, we're not only going to deal with all of that, we're going to make it mobile.
Well, there's a demand. There's a gateway to entry, and being mobile, we have a little bit more flexibility where we base out of. So that gives us an opportunity to not only support ourselves in terms of business development, like getting our foot off the ground and kind of getting a brand behind us. But beyond that, you're talking mobile. It's kind of a unique service. You're talking a lot of the dealerships. They don't have guys that come out to the field for those guys that just can't logistically get their trucks prepared, especially for the routine stuff. If we can actually, come to on site, they don't have to worry about shuttling a truck back and forth, letting it be down for days. Like it's a real pain in the butt. So being able to come with our service to, whoever we're doing repairs on, it makes it a little bit more streamlined, and that's a service we can provide.
Now, I noticed when I looked up your services that you guys do preventive maintenance, you do tunings, you take care of tires, and I'm looking down here because I thought preventive maintenance is a really big part of what you guys do, and being able to go to the truck areas. Has that been something that once y'all started this, that say maybe down the road you guys would want to get a building, or is mobile really where you see the best place for you guys to stick in the future?
We have a few ideas. Being in a more traditional shop is definitely a component to what we want to do. We also have the mobile that's, I think, always going to be attached to it in some way, and it may be not at every location. It's probably location specific, but it definitely wants to be incorporated into our like normal support cycle, because there's just a model there. There's really a good framework to support folks out in the field. But I think the shop gives us some latitude for some of those unique jobs that require just a little more specialized work, a little more specialized tools. And it's hard to do that in the field, which is why preventative maintenance works really great for the mobile. But some of the deeper dives, you really do need specialized equipment in the field if you're going to do the kind of stuff we're talking about. So having a shop is definitely a necessity.
I see that you guys are strictly B2B, which is business to business, for those who may not be familiar with that term. Was that a conscious decision to just go business to business? Because nowadays I see a lot of people with diesel trucks that are privately owned. Was that a conscious decision to stick with business to business when you guys started?
Yes, and we have taken a few clients on a case by case basis on a consumer level, but our focus is not there. It's really not the way we have structured our mindset. Like I said, we have such a need with other businesses that just don't have their own maintenance shop, or they don't have enough support or experience to do what we're trying to do. And you've kind of touched on it a couple of times. We do commercial trucks from the heavy duty semis all the way down to the light pickup trucks. So we do touch on some of those light pickup trucks. It just a lot of times a business will have a mix of equipment and vehicles, and that's kind of the idea. We're more based on fleet maintenance that just covers the whole range of vehicle and whatnot. And as we continue to grow, we're going to gain more personnel that have experience. We're going to continue to have a training budget and really expand on what we can provide out in the community.
Now, I noticed from your website that you guys service a 25-mile radius for the Manassas, Virginia area. How do people get in touch with you guys for that service?
Well, and that 25 miles an mile radius is not an exact science. It's really just our focus area. It's not something that we can't exceed that, but we have to start thinking about mileage, especially with today's gas prices, fuel prices. And then you're talking labor loss, because if you're just driving, that's a lot of labor, just driving time. You're not making money at that point. So you really have to be mindful of that, let alone all the wear and tear on a vehicle. So that's why our current focus area is about 25 miles, but it's not strict. And as we continue to grow, like I said, we're based out of Manassas right now. We're only, like I said, about 19 months old. As we continue to solidify that location and that radius, we will continue to expand. I actually was having a conversation with somebody last night about maybe moving up towards Baltimore or going up south, going down south as far as, Florida. So like we have opportunities there, but we're trying to make sure that we do it smartly and correctly. That way we put the right frameworks in place and the right, thought processes are, so that way of growing isn't going to be exceeding what we can actually support.
That's a good thing. I'm going to ask you some questions now. I picked out some out of my question box just for you. There'll be no gotcha questions, but I think you'll enjoy them. Okay. What is the best or worst, funniest job you've ever held?
The funniest job?
Yeah. Best, worst, or funniest job you've ever held?
That's a good question. I would say one of my first jobs, well, there's a couple of them. So I'm thinking my worst job right offhand is, honestly, at the moment, I was a young teenager looking for work. I did not know a lick of what I was doing. I got hired on as a sales guy for like a construction company, just handing out flyers in community, doing that just door to door, salesman kind of routine. It was still viable in that area and in that time frame, but I was horrible at it. I didn't make one sale. They gave me like 2 weeks just trying to make, get my feet under me. I could not get the confidence to do it. And that it showed me some light that I wasn't ready for sales directly, but at the same time, it gave me that experience to at least start getting familiar with that space. It did bode well, and it set me up on a different kind of path long term, looking back. If you really want to start at my first like real job, I grew up luckily on a kind of a unique space. My folks lived on an old golf course, about 9 holes, so nothing crazy. And we were about 3 or 4 holes down from the tee off. And let's just say that golfers didn't exactly tee off correctly very often. So I collected a lot of golf balls. But in the summertime, you're talking people get hot. So, you come out with a cooler full of cheap sodas, sell them for 50 cents, and you wash those golf balls and sell them back to them for a quarter. They're happy as a lark, and I make a few bucks in the process. So
you've always had that entrepreneur spirit then.
I really have, and I didn't really appreciate it until later in life. But that really set myself up on a journey, and my parents, at least my mom, was very supportive of that thought process. My dad was too, but I know my mom was a little more animated about it, and not just let me do my thing. I mean, I started working for the neighbor a lot, doing mowing and, helped him reseal his driveway, did snow removal when it got cold. So like, I've always kind of picked up odds and end jobs and had that mentality, I guess, from childhood. And
it probably served you very well, right?
You keep a very humble mind when it comes to that sort of thing, and you can really grow from that. And looking back at it, it's never stopped. During school, I had an opportunity to start working with the multi-level marketing stuff. So that started me on a personal growth path. And I kind of went from there and just continued to push myself to explore options, get better at myself personally, really dive into those details that I really needed to hone to get to who I need to be now. It's really a lifelong journey. I still continue to go down that path. I mean, even as right now, I'm leading 13 of us. So like, it takes a lot of toll, and you have to really develop those personal skills in addition to those leadership and management type stuff that you really have to hone. I've been very fortunate. I volunteered when I was young with Civil Air Patrol, and I will always give a shout out to those guys because I started my journey on the leadership management path back in 12, and I've continued down that path even through my active duty service in the Air Force. Like, I've just maintained a lot of volunteer thought processes on the development of people and managing things. It just happens to be now the diesel industry. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. And I say diesel, it's really the commercial and medium duty, vehicles for the most part. Because there's a wave, I think we're on the edge and precipice of that. We're shifting away from diesel long term over the next couple of decades. We're doing EVs now. We're doing hydrogen. I think there's a lot of push for some shift in the mode, but I don't think it's going to be mainstream for a while. You know, as we know in the government, everything takes a little longer to get everything caught up, and even in the industry, like you have to have a market for it to really work. And we're trying to stay ahead of it as much as we can. But right now, there's such a demand for diesel where at least we can really solidify our space before that shift happens.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole here, but
that's okay. It helps people get to know who you are and what your thought processes are. And that's what part of the interview is about. It's about learning about your business, but also learning about the men and women behind their business that come on the show. So thank you for taking the time to share that. Here's another question is, what is a fun experience that you have had recently as it relates to your job?
Oh, fun experience?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a really tricky question because fun is relative to the person in the moment, I guess.
All right.
But I mean, dealing with folks, there's always a
chuckle or something somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
well, we'll pass on that question. Then we'll say we'll table it if you want to come back to it.
Well, I was actually going to say, because I'm working with, technicians.
Mm-hmm.
A good chunk of technicians, and anybody in the service probably would recognize and translate it to the maintenance world. Okay. We're all a little off, right? And we like to play tricks on each other. So the guys play tricks on each other all the time. Like we're mobile, so the guys put grease on the door handles, or they put balloons in the truck cab, stuff like that to kind of keep the entertainment value going and keep that camaraderie. So there's definitely some fun.
So there's fun to be had, even in working with heavy equipment, and that's nice to know. What are people usually surprised to find out about you?
As a company or personally?
No, just surprised to find about you, or even as the company.
Most folks assume that I have all this background. I'm not in a background of maintenance. Like that is not my forte. I've picked it up by osmosis being around all the guys, and I'm not fluent in it, but I know enough to be trouble.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's a lot of background stuff that people don't always pick up on right away. And they don't always know that I have a softer heart and this kind of conversation and a little bit more forefront. Over the last few years, I've had some experiences that have opened my eyes to a little more. And I'm always trying to encourage folks to develop and grow and trying to get out of a very fixed mindset and kind of get into a growth mindset. And that takes a huge mental pull. And as coming from the military background and even previously, I just have that warrior spirit. So I'm willing to try and keep tapping into those minds as much as possible. And that's for everyone, but I know it's kind of a men pull kind of thing. I'm trying to do that tribal development in terms of just passing down that information as much as possible and get folks comfortable with having those conversations that some people just struggle with opening up about. So definitely strive to push for that sort of thing.
That's a good thing.
And develop folks to kind of get more open about it.
Okay. Next question. What has been the greatest accomplishment so far for K&L?
We've had a few. I think solidifying, you kind of mentioned it with the Prince William County Chamber Awards. I can't complain. Like that was definitely, hey, this is a solidified, hey, we're doing something right, and people notice. So it's hard to really solidify that, and you really don't try and get external, validation when it comes to you're doing what you think. You got to just win your race without looking at the guy next to you, because it's really not about that. If you start focusing on everybody else, it doesn't work. But at the same time, it does give you a little bit of a pep in your step if you know that you're on the right path. So having that kind of award, and that award generated opportunities to get connected up with the Better Business Bureau and then get accredited through that, because they reached out to us recognizing that we were in the news, because the award popped up in the Inside the Nova and the local newspapers, and that started feeding into the conversation with the local BBB. So it's ever growing. We're trying to build that brand out, and it's constant, but that's definitely a proud moment. It's just
All right.
getting to that point and really starting to recognize that the community is reflective on the name. So like we can actually support in the way that we're trying to do with just some solid brand recognition.
That's good. Now, what is one thing life is teaching you right now in regards to your business?
Resilience and staying humble. You really have to have some serious grit and push through the mental tolls. There is so many times that I don't sleep, and I know my business partner does the same. We run the business on the day to day, and there's nights that we both just we're staying up late just talking, and then still have to get up in the morning to set the example with the guys. We try to run it like a military operation in some ways. We the first in, first last out kind of thing, and try and maintain that philosophy. We want to take care of the guys, so one of us is trying to be setting the tone. First thing getting the guys going in the morning, and the other one's covering down. So one of us is trying to at least check in at any given time, so that way there's coverage. It gets exhausting, but all the headaches that you can't always share because the guys just don't know, and I say guys, people just don't always recognize the entrepreneurial stressors because there's requirements on us to make sure that they're taken care of. And then whatever's left is what we get. So if there's only 2 hours in the day, guess what? That's us, and we have to just bite the bullet. Other than that, like we have to just keep pushing through, and it takes a real mental toll, and especially when things aren't quite where you want it to be. And things aren't flowing quite as much as you want it to go. Like things get clunky, things get rough, and you just have to bear with it and recognize that it'll come through in time. You just got to step back, rest, whatever you got to do to recover and regroup. It's not a retreat. It's a tactful, tactful way of coming back and regrouping and then reattacking in a different way. And maybe with a fresh mind, little slight new set of rules.
We're being that you are a fairly new business and you've already won an award. Is there anything that you and the co-founders have said, we did this, and as you say, stay humble, but we really want to accomplish this over, say, the next 5 years with the company?
And we have a lot of goals, but we also recognize you kind of have to go with the flow of the energy of the world. So when the time is right, it'll happen. So we are just churning and pushing as hard as we can given the situation. It's like any other good operation. You got to recognize what's the data on the field, receive it, and be like, you know what, the timing isn't right, or hey, the world is telling us we need to start pushing in this direction. Okay, we've done that a couple times already, and just in the last year and a half, like we weren't advocating for a certain direction, and it just things kind of fell in our lap. It was like, oh, I guess we need to go down this path. So we went and gone through this path. So we're opening doors when the time is right and when the energy is telling us, you know what, we should start looking into this a little harder, not just passively, but like actively. And we've gone through those cycles, but we are definitely not letting the gas off the pedal more than we have to. We might, just coast a little bit, or just take a breather just so we can regroup, kind of take a assessment of the situation. But at the same time, the moment that we get a breather and we kind of get that, hey, this is the new layout of the land, we're putting the gas back to the pedal. We have no aspirations of stopping in Manassas. We have aspirations to go regionally at first. So you're talking up and down the I-95 corridor, maybe east-west on the 66 corridor. Now, I have aspirations of getting locations across the I-70 corridor, which folks that are, down that that's a huge corridor, in I-70, I-80, I-10 down south. Like you have a whole slew of opportunities for vehicles that are getting maintained. And that's not just the major cities. You're talking, for us, we're talking about some like quick lube services to compete with some of those very limited support network right now in terms of like the old Loves, or the different truck stops that exist out there. There's services that are provided out of there, but you can tell that sometimes they're lackluster and they don't really do it well, and they don't have a good brand behind it because they know that they're the one-stop shop, so they get kind of priority. But I'd like to be a competitor in that space and really do it well.
That'd be good. All right, Ryan. Well, tell me, with all the things that you got going on with KNL, how is what you're currently doing helping you live your best life now?
Combination of things. Obviously, we're in it to get a little bit more out of it. I know personally, it's as a bonus long term. I know the financial side of things will be there. It'll set myself up for my own time to do my own things, and that I have a real passion for volunteer and giving back. So that will afford me to do that. But I can also choose to be involved in the business as much as I can and physically can, because there's only 24 hours in the day and I got to do certain basic needs to stay functional. But those other hours I can work, and I'll probably still be a workaholic. So I will still be engaged in the business, but at the same time, I can step back a little bit and let folks run it. And then I can be involved in my other charity work. I can be involved in different businesses because I want to be a consultant. So KNL is giving me an opportunity to hone some of those skills, but also build some credibility. So when I want to be in that space personally, I know I want to be able to have that conversation and speak intelligently on it. I would love to work with other, entrepreneurs, be it veteran or otherwise. Like, there is such a demand, and there's not a push in this today's day and age to be an entrepreneur. And there's so many hurdles. So if that means me being an angel investor at some point, if the finances are there, like being a consultant, being whatever it takes to kind of get into that headspace. But I just know the way the world works these days, you have to have that credibility and that backing and background. And I'm trying to set myself up to be that. So if that means for me over the next decade, I have to start KNL and have multiple departments and branches. Maybe I start 3 other companies in that time frame to really hone that thought process and that rounded exposure. So that way, when that time is right, I can be that consultant and that educator. I can speak to it in a very intelligent kind of way. And hopefully I get better with doing these kind of interviews and I can articulate it very well.
Or you're doing just fine. If you want to get in touch with Ryan and the other members of the KNL Auto and Diesel Repairs, you can go to www.klrepairsautoanddiesel.com. We're going to make sure we put that in the description so you can find it along with their phone number and their operating hours. So make sure if you're in the Manassas, let me say this right. If you are in the Manassas, Virginia area and you're in a 25-mile radius and you need preventive maintenance, general truck repair, heavy equipment repair, preventive maintenance, truck wheel alignment and tuning, then you guys need to get in touch with the fellows over there at KNL so they can come out with their mobile unit and get your truck or heavy equipment road worthy. Ryan, I'd like to thank you again for coming here. Do you have any last thoughts for the audience?
Yeah, always continue to be pushing through. There's always going to be hurdles. There's always going to be the naysayers, and you're going to get those dream killers that are going to want to drag you down. Just keep pushing. Also, continue to study. Most folks jump into the entrepreneur game a little earlier than they probably should. I don't want you to get caught on like analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis. Sorry, little dyslexic moment here. But you do want to study it, and it's more than just the field itself. Like a lot of folks pop into, let's say, electrician. They know the electrician backwards and forwards, but learning how to run the business, there's another layer there. You have to know accounting. You have to know legal. You know how to do marketing. You have to be that one-stop shop at least long enough until you start handing it off to folks. So do your homework, do some study, but don't let the naysayers hold you down, and just stay as ahead of those problems as much as possible, and give yourself a little bit of cushion and grace. When you get down, it's going to beat you up, but you'll get through it. And obviously, if there's ever a need, feel free to reach out to me, and hopefully we can have a conversation and maybe push through some of those things. But hopefully those other entrepreneurs out there will continue to get inspired. And personally, you're going to get a lot more out of it if you give back as much as you're trying to get from the world. So just remember that.
Remember, the choices you make today will be the choices you live tomorrow. So choose wisely and choose to reach out to KNL Auto and Diesel Repairs, located in Manassas, Virginia. Be blessed.